All right, hello everybody. This is Leo Brady with AMovieGuy.com. I am so delighted, so excited. This is fantastic. I am here with the director and writer of his new film, Brooklyn 45. This is director Ted Geoghegan. Thanks, Ted, for being with me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is, so I was at the premiere last night, and I have to sort of, you spoke about this, so I have to ask this question right off the bat for you to sort of talk about how this is an incredibly personal project for you. Can you just tell my audience sort of the powerful connection that this film has and what it means to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I made a film in 2015 called We Are Still Here, and the sequence has a seance in it. I'm sorry, the film has a seance in it that it's between Larry Fessenden and another actor named Andrew Sensenig, and I love that scene, but audiences really gravitated toward it. And I would constantly, when I'd show the film at festivals, they were like, I love that seance scene. And my joke response was always, well, if you love it so much, my next movie is just gonna be one big seance scene. And it got a laugh, and I was like, that's cute. But it kind of like planted a seed, and I was like, what would that be like to do a movie where like it's just like a 90-minute seance? And obviously I knew there'd have to be times where they stopped the seance and times where they restarted, but like how would you do that? Like a real-time 90-minute seance. And so I came up with a concept. I came up with like an A, B, and C where I wanted it to go. I decided I wanted it to be set in the months following World War II, which is a time that's not really seen, not just in genre cinema, but in cinema at all.
Yeah.
And I started writing it, and I got through the first act, and I knew what happened next, but I had no idea how to get there.
Yeah.
And so on a whim, I sent the script to my father, who's a quadriplegic Air Force veteran, who was paralyzed in 1971. And I was like, Dad, I'm writing this thing, and it's about World War II, and it's about veterans, and would you just take a look at it and tell me like what's right and what's wrong? And he was like, I'm not creative at all, man. He's like, I consume art, I don't make it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's fine. Just tell me what's wrong. And so he read it, and he was like, oh, this guy, he never would have been in that battle. He would have been in this battle. And he was like, you call this guy a general? No, he'd be a colonel. And like all these little things.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. And like, I added it into the script, and all of a sudden it's like, it sounds so dumb, but like every single character came to life. Like all of a sudden, every single one of them. And I was like, this is unreal. And I got so excited. And the rest of the script just poured out of me. And I sent it back to my dad when it was complete, and he was like, oh, now that I know the end, now you have to change this and this. And again, historical, technical things. And it was never anything that was like, this guy should be nicer, this guy should be, no, it was purely like, this guy would never use that word.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, great. And so we bounced it back and forth like 6 or 7 times, and it was in early 2019. I sent it to him, and he read it, and he was like, dude, he called me, and he was like, it's done, man, it's done. This is awesome. And I was like, yeah, it's great. And he was like, I can't wait to watch this movie. And we hung up the phone, and he died the next day.
Wow.
And it was the last conversation I ever had with my dad. And I suddenly was like, holy shit! Like I didn't know this movie was going to be this personal now.
Yeah.
Like, and now it's like, this is the only movie I ever get to make with my dad.
Yeah.
And like, I can't F it up.
Right.
Like, and so suddenly I got like really scared, and like I cannot mess this thing up. And I, much like Hawk in the movie, like I don't really buy into an afterlife. So it wasn't this idea of like my dad's up on this cloud, like waiting to watch the movie.
Right.
But it was like, for me, it was like, I want this to be something that I'm proud to dedicate to him.
Yeah.
And just like, so that was 2019. It was January 2019 when my dad passed away, and I started going to film festivals, for a very short amount of time pre-COVID, and meeting people and trying my best to like find financing for this. And the team at Divide and Conquer, Adam Hendricks in particular, he had been a fan of the script for a while, and he introduced me to Seth Kaplan, who ended up becoming my primary producer on the film.
Yeah.
And Seth fought for this movie. I mean, all of them fought for this movie for so long, and eventually Shudder came on board as our financiers and as our distributors. And we got to make something that I'm now super proud of.
Yeah.
Like last night I went into that theater and I was nervous, because you're always nervous at a world premiere, but I was like, it's like, you know what, like, take a breath, Ted. Like, I love this movie.
Right.
And I'm like, it doesn't matter if other people like this movie. And then of course I go like, it does. I really want everyone to like this. I worked so hard on this movie.
Yeah.
But I also I love it.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what matters.
It is.
Show business. I guess somebody else has to love it, but
right.
Hey, it's playing South by, so somebody else must have liked it.
Yes, it's good. It's good enough to be here, and it is. It honestly, it moved me at times, and I really think this is your third film now. You talked about We Are Still Here and Mohawk, and now this, and I wanted to sort of mention how incredibly unique all three films are. There is really not there's little threads here and there, but you have made three films that you can say he is working in different avenues and trying to sort of expand his artistic expression. Can you sort of tell me why you've kind of changed your style? I mean, I think after We Are Still Here, after the success of that, people probably were like, oh, I want another, haunted house movie from you. And I want to, I want another, but you were like, no, I'm going to go make a, Native American war movie. And now I'm going to make a post World War II film that really at times can feel like a stage play. I mean, I don't think that's what people are expecting. And I think that's a sort of credit to you. So can you sort of speak on that?
Absolutely. We Are Still Here, all three of the films, they do have some connective fibers. They're all period pieces. We Are Still Here is set in 1979. And We Are Still Here is really about the sins of the fathers. It's about this couple that moves into a house, and the town that they moved into did some really bad shit a while back, and now it's going to take its toll on these people.
Yeah.
And Mohawk, which is set in 1814, quite a ways into the War of 1812. And again, it's about the sins of the fathers, but in this case, it's, we have this story about these brave indigenous people fighting for their land and their culture, but it's also about the sins of my fathers, the white colonizers who came in and tried to make America great the first time by wiping out all of the people of color and the people of questionable sexual orientations and the people who are just different. Yeah. And how that still reverberates today. Yeah. And the fact that in Mohawk, you're obviously rooting for the indigenous characters, but we know sadly how it ended. Right. We know that these amazing brave people were put into reservations, and they were summarily executed, and we find that this past still haunts us. It haunts me. Growing up, I grew up in rural Montana, and the weight of knowing what my ancestors did was one of the big reasons why I wanted to make Mohawk, and I wanted to make it as authentic as possible with Mohawk actors speaking Geoghegan, and that was very important to me. Right. But the other thing about Mohawk was, like you said, We Are Still Here. I think everybody was like, he's going to make The Conjuring 8 next. And that would have been a blast. Of course, let's hire me to make The Conjuring 8. I'll make it. It'll be weird. Yeah. But it was also I want to do something different. I don't want to become the haunted house guy. Yeah. And I did something that was such a wide swing. Yeah. And some people loved it and some people hated it. And I was like, cool. Yeah. I like that. I like that it's a totally different audience. And I think a lot of people went into it being like, oh, it's the new movie from the guy who made We Are Still Here. And they watched it and like, what in the hell is this? I think that's really cool. Yeah. I don't want the same thing. I don't want to do the same thing again and again and again. But there are a lot of directors out there who do the same thing again and again, and they do it great. Right. A lot of my contemporaries whose films feel very similar, I love that. Yeah. You know what? I fucking love sitting down to a Joe Begos movie. Right. Because Joe has this beautiful, pitch black, but with neon, and it's going to be gory, and it's going to be sexy, and it's going to be vulgar. I love that. I love sitting down to one of his films because I know what I'm getting into. Yeah. And if Joe wants to make something totally left field, hell yes, I'm going to watch it. Yeah. But there is a great joy. And we were talking about Ty West. A lot of Ty West's films, again, feel very cut from the same cloth. Right. But they each have their own thing going on. But again, Ty makes a movie, I'm first in line to check it out.
Yeah.
You know, like I love that. But
Yeah.
I want to keep being weird. I want to keep making different stuff.
And that seemed to be like the response last night. I mean, like I don't know if you were outside. I mean, the fans were literally like pushing their ways through to just make sure that they were in line and they got a spot to see the movie.
Nice to hear.
Yeah,
I was
right.
not outside.
Nobody was hurt. So,
Okay.
but like I also think it's another big credit too is how you get these amazing horror and genre film actors to be in your movies. And I want to talk about, for Brooklyn 45, talk specifically about two of them, Anne Ramsay and Larry Fessenden. I mean, can you talk about bringing her on to this project? Absolutely. I mean, I think her performance is probably one of the best that we'll see at South by Southwest this year.
Yes.
And it really is like, you see actors like this and you constantly wonder why they don't get more shots,
Yeah.
And I know that they've been in a lot of genre stuff, but you're like, man, where has Anne Ramsay been, and why does it take so long for us to see her in something so great as this?
So I've liked Anne forever. I grew up watching A League of Their Own. That was the first place I saw her.
Same.
Weirdly, it was playing on the airplane on my flight down here, so I got to watch Anne on my way to see Anne, which was actually kind of amazing.
Yeah.
But I'd seen her in many things. Mad About You. She's been on for years, and she's on The L Word. And I saw her in The Taking of Deborah Logan, where she's got a pretty substantial role in that.
Yeah.
And she was recommended by my producer, Seth Kaplan, who had worked with her previously, and was just like, she's amazing, and I think she's our Marla.
Yeah.
And I'd spoken to a few people, and we had a Zoom call, and we both got really teary-eyed on the Zoom call. Like, we both were just like, she was really vibing with me, and I was really vibing with her. And we hung up that call, and I like raced to my wife, and I was like, we just found Marla. Like, we found her. Yeah. I was like, I pray to God that she's available and she can do this movie. And she was, and she just slays it. I mean, she's, and it's such a fun, and when I say fun, I mean, the movie all movies should be fun. And I think even given the weight of what happens in Brooklyn 45, it's still fun. You still enjoy yourself while watching it. And I think it's a role that she was really able to sink her teeth into. Yeah. And really make her own, and I gave her a lot of room to do things that she wanted to do. And I know it's such a dumb term, but like, I do consider myself like an actor's director. Like, I really just want to sit down with people and like hug them and be like, what do you need from me? Yeah. Like, to make this your own? Like, do you need more direction? Do you need less direction? Like, and if I get what I want from you, I'm just going to stand back, and I'm just going to let the magic happen. And it was amazing how often that happened on this film. Right. Where I would just be like, okay, let's just try one. Let's just, like, everybody just kind of like, let's see where this goes, and call action and be done. Like, oh my God, like, everybody slayed it. And I'd come out and I'd be like, this is ridiculous, but like, can we just do one more exactly the same? And everybody's like, no notes. And I'm like, no notes. You guys are incredible. And everybody became a family, because it is like a stage play, and it was like us making a play for a month. Right. And we're all in this tiny room together, so we had no choice but to become old friends. Right. And it was exciting. Yeah. And it just, she's one in a million, like, to work with her again in a heartbeat. She's a very, very strong, kick-ass lady, just like the character in the film. Yeah. Well, and what about Larry? I mean, I honestly, like, this guy, he's coming off of, what's the name of the movie with Barbara? Jacob's Wife. Sure. He's so good in that, and now he's sort of like taking an entire different turn here as well. Yeah. He just shows versatility in everything, but you also kind of put him through the ringer on this a little bit, which is kind of fun. So too many spoilers. Larry, Larry definitely goes through the ringer. Larry's a really old friend of mine. I've known him almost since I first moved to New York 17 years ago. I'd always wanted to make something with him. I've been a fan of him as a director for ages. Like, I grew up watching Habit, and his work in the 90s and aughts is amazing. And he's got a new film that he just directed called Blackout that I'm like out of my mind excited to see. It's a werewolf movie. Oh, awesome. And he's such a phenomenal director, and he's such a phenomenal actor. And my whole thing is always like, Larry pops up in, a dozen movies a year. Right. but it's usually like a cameo. It's like Larry shows up and his head explodes, or Larry shows up and says a funny line as a convenience store clerk, and he's gone.
Yeah.
And I was just like, he's so talented. Like, why don't people give him more to chew on?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you know, he is getting bigger roles, like in Jacob's Wife, which is phenomenal.
Yep.
But anytime I have the opportunity to put Larry in like a big role, I'm going to put him in a big role. And you know, he had a pretty substantial role in We Are Still Here, and you know, he's the host of the dinner party in Brooklyn 45, and it's a pretty substantial role there.
Yeah.
And I just think he's a powerhouse. I mean, he was a 7-page monologue in Brooklyn 45.
Yeah.
And who can pull that off? It's insane. And I mean, we shot it 8 times. That day was just him giving the speech about losing his faith,
right,
and everything. It's just out of control, crazy.
So, and you're talking about that monologue that he gives. You know, the dialogue in this, I mean, your writing is like so crisp, and like, I mean, like you're really like getting the depth of each character out of the words that they're speaking. But you know, you can definitely pick up. It's interesting as you and I are talking right now. I'm thinking about a movie of like kind of like the best years of our lives, and like about people who come home from wars and trauma and all those things. But there's also very much a hint of like the current climate of the world, you know, about like how we can judge people or how we can be accusatory towards others. Talk about sort of, was it hard to sort of relate, you know, a World War II movie to today, or was that just like
you could remake Brooklyn 45 and call it Brooklyn 23?
Yeah.
I mean, we're unfortunately dealing with the same xenophobia. We're dealing with the same blind patriotism.
Yeah.
You know, like these are issues that are not going away. I would, you know, I'm not a fan of the present, which is one of the main reasons why I make films that are period pieces.
Yeah.
But sadly, like, they're all very current. You know, like I'd love to make a film about the past that when you watch it, you're like, boy, things were really bad back then. Instead of like, and they still are.
Right.
So, and that's,
Yeah.
it's definitely caught up with us. So we're not caught up with us, never left.
Never left us.
Yeah.
Well, and like you talk about, you earlier talked about your writing process. I mean, giving it to your dad. I mean, for you, was it just like, I'm gonna go away into a room for quite a while and put, you know, hands to a keyboard and get it all out on a page?
Yeah.
Or is it, you know, that long process of like making sure everything's right before you finally say this is done?
Yeah, I'm quite the introvert, so like any chance I get to just be like alone in my little tiny office just writing, like that's heaven for me.
Yeah.
So you know, it's like I like to tinker with the script here and there, like when I was going through these drafts, and you know, there were some pretty substantial changes and some pretty minimal changes that just drastically affected the film. You know, one of the I'm gonna watch how cleverly I can do this without saying anything. One of the big plot points in the film is are they or aren't they?
Yeah.
About one of the characters.
Yeah.
And in the original script, we see it is answered.
Yeah.
And in the film, it is not.
Okay.
And that was really fun to work with and realize that like the answer is not important.
Yeah.
Like what's important are the actions of the characters not knowing the answer.
Right.
So
yeah. Well, this film, you know, honestly, it's really spectacular, and I hope like all of your actors get attention for this, and you get the attention you deserve for this, because the writing is fantastic, and I can't wait to see it again. And I think it's gonna surprise a lot of people. I think your career is continuing to rise, and congratulations.
thank you so much. I'm excited for people to see it. It's going to be on Shudder this summer.
Awesome.
So,
All right. Everybody will check it out. Thanks, Ted Geoghegan. You're the man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.